Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we're breaking down the 13th studio album from the American alternative rock band Weezer. This one is another self-titled release. This is the Black Album. 13 records deep, 27 years old, Weezer have shaped the landscape of 90s alternative rock, 2000s pop rock, and have notoriously been thrown under the bus by their own fan base for never sticking to their original sound. Over the years, frontman Rivers Cuomo has expressed his desire to write music for himself and continues to ignore what his fans expect of him, and I respect that. I think artists should have the creative freedom to do as they please. And regardless of the number of albums that have suffered in quality, I don't care what the debate is. I'm a firm believer that the worst of Weezer is behind us in the 2000s. But even if some of their records don't hit every note consistently or cohesively, I've always been able to handpick 2 or 3 songs from each one to come back to on regular occasion. Despite these flops or sellouts, whatever you really want to call them, Weezer have been self-aware of their sonic changes over the years, and it's been well documented in their lyrics, which are among some of the weirdest and most left-field sayings you can have on tape. Now, before jumping into the review of the Black Album, it's worth noting the prolific amount of music this band has been releasing over the past 5 years. They've had 5 albums dating back to 2014, which is an accomplishment itself given that the band writes their own material, and the wait time between records has only seemed to have increased since the 1960s. Now, of course, with more releases, you run the risk of being repetitive or having a stale sound, but Weezer have varied their approach to each record despite the roller coaster of mixed reception. 2014's Everything Will Be Alright in the End and 2016's White Album have put Weezer back on the map for being relevant in the rock scene. Again, well respected for their witty or nerdy sound. Whereas 2017's Pacific Daydream and 2019's Teal Album, well yeah, they've been insulted beyond belief. Somehow through this crazy amount of mixed reception, Weezer managed to garner success from attention and praise from the Grammys and other award shows, while much of its fan base is left there divided and scratching their heads trying to figure out what's coming next for the band. Now, talking about the Black Album, this release was teased shortly after their release of the White Album, and it came with the promise of getting a darker treatment to the lyrics and the production, which was initially rolled out with the funky and catchy single Can't Knock the Hustle. I ranked the single among the top 50 songs of 2018, and the follow-up singles have only seen an improvement. Zombie Bastards is an infectious pop tune, and yes, it does call out the Weezer fan base, but in a way that isn't overly offensive, and trust me, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. I'm not offended. To High as a Kite and Living in LA, especially the first one I mentioned there, High as a Kite, that will be really memorable for music in 2019. Now, beyond the singles, I was intrigued with how the rest of the album would play out, given that the first 4 songs on the track list are the singles. I mean, the closing track was also a single from 2018, California Snow. This one's grown on me quite a bit since its initial release, as it represents the darker and more experimental sounds that the band was hinting at with this Black Album. And we owe the darker direction of sound to the producer of this record, Dave Sitek. He's a member of the band TV on the radio. He's worked with artists like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Santigold, and the Carters, better known as Jay-Z and Beyonce. So wide influences are felt here with darker production, and I think it plays well with Weezer's strengths. I mean, we're not getting a rehash of Pinkerton by any means, but I don't think I want this album to be Pinkerton Part 2. Instead, it lands more in the vein of what was displayed on Pacific Daydream sonically, but with plenty of improvements across the board in my opinion, lyrically, melodically, production-wise, all while expanding the instrumentation in a fun and exciting way. This experimental sound is especially felt on the track Byzantine, as it loops a synthetic drum pattern along with captivating vocal harmonies. The song essentially pulls from a variety of genres, including electronic, indie, even some eclectic Eastern sounds in its interlude. Outside the experimental influence, which is a little bit less than I had hoped for, a lot of this record is shaped from a pop rock perspective. Tracks like Too Many Thoughts and I'm Just Being Honest are among some of the group's most satisfying deep cuts, which I feel unfortunately will be overlooked by many fans on this release. There's just something appealing to the 80s sheen of influence on I'm Just Being Honest, and hearing Rivers insult his friends and lovers in comedic fashion. Even with the monotone vocal delivery on Too Many Thoughts, Rivers hones a scary and frightening tone, all to be juxtaposed to the gorgeous ukulele and steady drumming provided by Pat Wilson. Now, the Black Album is not without its flaws either. I'm just pleasantly surprised with how few and far between they come, as the only tracks I'm really disappointed with on here are Piece of Cake and The Prince Who Wanted Everything. Both of these tracks sadly cop out in their choruses with the basic da-do-da-doos, and the instrumentation doesn't do much to entice the listener to come back without wanting to skip to the next. As for the flow and pacing of the record, it's another typical 10-track project. Weezer is really used to this at this point, as all 6 of their self-titled releases have had 10 songs and around 30 to 45 minutes of material. It really just shows how Rivers has perfected the pop rock formula at this point and has adapted to the changing musical landscape coming out of a decade that originally depended upon physical sales and MTV viewership, and now transitioning to a time that depends on the number of streams, sound bites, or memes. Rivers has definitely got the meme part down pat, but I've got to give him praise for the songwriting too. A lot of the Black Album was what I anticipated from Weezer. It met my expectations about 80% of the time, and frankly, it impressed me more often than not. So with that being said, I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this brand new Weezer record. I know it's pretty positive, isn't it? Take it from a biased Weezer fan perspective if you must, but just know that the blue and white albums will reign superior. Just know that in 2019, Weezer is not letting me down. They may have done that in 2017 with Pacific Daydream, but they're back on track in my mind. Sound off down below in the comments, leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a rockin' day.